So you also cited Tracy Tokuhama Espinosa, a well-known expert and researcher in the field of mind, brain, and education. And she said that all educators should adhere to the golden rule of medicine, which is do no harm. This is something that struck me as well, André. Why did she say this? Can you elaborate on this?
Yes, you know, Tracy Tokuhama Espinosa is like the queen of mind brain education, you know, like we joke about that. So I'm part of a special interest group in Brazil for the Brass-TESOL Association. It's called the Mind Brain Education SIG. And basically what we do is we promote ideas based on neuroscience, psychology, and education, you know. And so we have our board members. So Mirella was the founder of the group. And then we have Cynthia, Rodolfo, Luis, me, promoting events, let's say, to make educators and teachers, specifically teachers, more aware of what can actually work better in the classroom. Because if we are using ineffective strategies based on neuromyths, which are misconceptions, let's say, about how the brain works and the different parts of the brain, that means we are probably doing harm, you know? We are doing harm. We are actually hindering or I don't know, we are setting our students back in a way. We are somehow interfering negatively with their potential in terms of learning. So that's why Tracy Tokuhama says that, because nowadays, even today, with all the technology we have, access to knowledge that we have, there are so many neuromyths around. They're so prevalent. And, you know, that makes sense because we live in this era of fake news, you know, the post-truth era, and there's, you know, just too much information everywhere. So it's very hard to find reliable information about how we can teach more effectively. So that means that the mind-brain education field, and like I said, Tracy Tokuhama is the queen of mind-brain education, is trying to promote, let's say, evidence-based practices, you know. So they were tested, they are corroborated. So they're, and again, it's very hard for us to say that there's a fixed formula because there isn't really. But the idea of having a transdisciplinary area, which is mind-brain education, that means psychology, neuroscience, and pedagogy. And then you have the contributions of neuroscience conversing with the contributions of psychology and the contributions of education, then you have a more reliable source of information. Because one of the things that we see also, there are many, I would call them charlatans or I don't know, scammers, you know, selling things based on neuroscience, because so they use the neuroscientific jargon to say, you know, this is going to revolutionize the way you learn. Learn English is 6 months because you're going to use a spaced repetition app or whatever. It doesn't work like that. So we have to be careful not to rely just on neuroscience, because neuroscience is done in a lab. Most of neuroscience relies on neuroimaging technology, you know, so we can actually check what's going on inside the brain. And when you remove the student from the context of the classroom and you put them in an I don't know, fMRI machine, you know, to see what's going on in the brain, it's not the same thing as being in the classroom. So that's why we have to look at psychology as well, because psychology has the theories, you know, and psychology has tested things with at the group level, not just the individual inside their brains, you know, and then check those things. And that's what we're trying to do. And I think Tracy Tokuhama is probably the biggest reference, Paul Howard Jones as well, trying to fight neuromyths so that we can stop doing harm, let's say, to our students, you know, so we can help, you know, help them achieve their potential as learners and be more effective learners.
Okay, so we're going to talk about emotional intelligence. This is my favorite topic within education and neuroscience.
Excellent. Wonderful.
I believe that it is one of the skills that we need to teach our students from a very young age to know how, you know, so they know how they are feeling, what their emotions mean and how these emotions can affect our other people, as well as how to manage their own emotions. How crucial is it for our young students to have the ability to understand and manage their own emotions?
Yeah, so this is something that has become, I would say, a buzzword in the last decades, because it's really important. It's something that we hadn't paid attention to for a very long time. Our students' emotional states, let's say, and being emotionally intelligent means being able to deal with that, you know, because one of the things that we learned from neuroscience specifically is that emotions and our emotional self cannot be separated from our cognitive self, you know, and that actually emotions, they probably take place before cognition, if you think about it. It's just, you know, whenever you're going to engage with something, emotions, they come first. They are the Antonio Damasio, who is a wonderful Portuguese neuroscientist, he says, emotions, they give you the lift, let's say, for you to want to engage with something, right? And it's very important for our students to be aware of their emotions, and for us to be aware of our students' emotions, because what we used to do for a very long time was basically ask the students to suppress or forget about their emotions. They can't do that. Physiologically speaking, you can control your emotions, you can regulate your emotions if you are emotionally intelligent. You can never suppress your emotions, you know? So what we have to understand, and one of the big references nowadays talking about that is Daniel Goleman, that I'm sure everybody's familiar with, right? And he published a book in, I think, 1995, based on the research of other authors. I think Salovey and Rose Salovey probably were the two main authors, and basically popularizing the idea that if we become more aware of our emotions, and then we try to sort of separate what we're feeling from how we act in the world, you know. So, I mean, to a certain degree, like I said, you can never really, you know, depending on what kind of emotion you're going through, it might be impossible for you to think clearly, you know. But the idea is that whenever the students are going through a heightened emotional state, maybe they can take a step back and really reframe what's going on and reinterpret the cues in the environment to actually see, well, we can use our cold processes, our cognition, to interfere with our hot processes, our emotion, you know, and vice versa. We can actually, you know, we can do it quite well as adults because we have the prefrontal cortex fully formed, and we know that some of our executive functions, especially inhibitory control. So whenever you look at the literature, a lot of the researchers, they basically classify executive functions in three groups, you know. So they talk about working memory, they talk about cognitive flexibility, switching, and they talk about inhibiting or inhibitory control. And that one, the last one, has a lot to do with controlling, regulating our emotions, which is also connected with the idea of self-regulation. But executive functions, they have to do with our prefrontal cortex. And kids, they don't have their prefrontal cortices formed yet. It takes, nowadays, you know, scientists say it takes almost 30 years, you know, like 27 years to be fully mature, right? So that means that they need co-regulators. Kids, they cannot self-regulate well. They are impulsive, and we all know that. So they need an external agent to regulate them. So that's why an adult, a teacher, a caregiver, a parent, and that's why whenever kids are experiencing those emotions, what we normally do, because we were taught that way, or because we have too much content to cover, is to basically distract the kid from their emotions. And we're doing harm if we do that, because they will become less emotionally intelligent. They have to be able to deal with the emotions, not try to suppress or get distracted, you know. And there, just to wrap up, one of the most, let's say, referenced evidence that we have is that kids who grow up always avoiding dealing with your emotions because, you know, they get distracted by their teachers, or they get prizes and rewards, or by their parents, they get gifts, they will become, when they are adults, basically less emotionally intelligent. And then they will probably have to find an external agent to deal with your frustration. So they're much more likely to be drug addicts, or to abuse alcohol, for example, because they need the external factor, let's say, to help them deal with their emotions. If you are emotionally intelligent, you can step back a little bit and reframe the cues in the environment and deal with your frustration. But you need practice. If you've never done it, because everybody tries to distract you from that, then you're basically losing a very important opportunity in life. And this is what's happening nowadays. You have the new generation of kids, teenagers, they know a lot. They really know their stuff. You can talk to anyone, a 14-year-old boy, and he'll tell you so many facts about many things. But he's frustrated emotionally because his parents don't allow him to fully embrace his emotions, And then imagine this person as a leader in the future who gets enraged because of whatever. They don't know how to deal with that. And maybe the employees are going to suffer because of this lack of control, let's say. So it's very complicated. We have to pay attention to our students' emotions,
In fact, this is why I believe in training or coaching educators, especially in early childhood settings, and parents in emotion regulation intervention programs, so that they'll be able to know how to co-regulate with their children and implement specific ER emotion regulation strategies.
Perfect, Eric. I couldn't agree more. Yes.